Larry Tucker. He's going to be speaking. He's a banker by profession, and he's going to be talking to you about himself and you know all other little stuff that he has to offer you. Okay, so let's give him a hand of applause.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Vincent. Excuse me for being too familiar. I didn't want to butcher your last name.
No, it's okay.
I am actually a computer programmer for Bank of America, but I consider my what I call my real job, although the Bank of America job is where the money comes from, I call my real job being the associate pastor at Bartimaeus Baptist Temple, which is a little church in Pleasant Grove in this area that is specifically organized to be a church where people with disabilities can come and be comfortable. And I have, if you're not able to see, I have in my hand a couple of little Braille note cards that I'm using to kind of direct my speech. Ordinarily, I would have some large transcription-sized sheets in front of me that I preach from. I'm sure it scares people because you know how big Braille is. They probably think I'm going to be there all night. But I promise I'm not here to preach to you. Although I am going to tell you that you got to change your ways. Just a little bit about myself. I was born blind. My parents tell me that because of prayer, I have what little vision I have now, which always prompted me to ask God, hey, why didn't you finish the job? But I've come to see that all things work together for good. So I'm okay with that. I am very thankful, though, for my parents because they did not treat me special. They didn't treat me different. They didn't ever say, well, I'm not going to say they didn't ever say because I have to believe that there were times when just pure common sense dictated that they would have had to say to me, that's not safe for you to do. That's not a good idea. But I do not have any memory of them ever saying, you can't do that because you're blind. And because of that, I didn't learn to think that way. The question was not ever if I can do it, but how can I do it? Just a little bit about the vision thing. I do have a little bit of travel vision. I can move around without necessarily having to use the cane, although I found that it's better if I do. But I can read if you make it giant and get 3 or 4 letters on an electronic magnifier at a time, so that's not very practical. I rely on Braille. I rely on audio. The condition has never been named. I've done some reading on the internet. I think I know what it is. My parents are convinced that it's because of the forceps delivery when I was born. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. It is what it is. I've got part of each eye that works. My optic nerves are underdeveloped. When I'm looking at you, you can't tell that I'm looking at you because I'm looking over my nose with one eye or the other. I don't see out of both of them at the same time. Growing up, I did go to a school for the blind briefly, learned some basic skills there, but most of my time was spent in public school. And I then moved to college. By the time I finally graduated, it was from Texas Tech University there in Lubbock. Took me a while to get there. On the way, I went through a program here locally at El Centro College. Some people here may be familiar with it. It was called the Computer Programmer Training for People with Disabilities, at least for the time that it was disbanded. One of the best programs that was ever done. It's really a shame that did not continue. It was one of the few that's actually successful at doing what it set out to do. But that was where I really learned to program, although I didn't get a job directly out of that. I ended up getting a degree in management information systems and then coming to work for what was then Nations Bank. Now, of course, it's Bank of America. I've been there for about 17 years. I'm a mainframe computer programmer, work on our retail loan system. But as I've called my real job, what I really enjoy doing is the work we do with Bartimaeus Baptist Temple. Also, my lovely wife sitting over to the side here has founded an organization called Mission Accessible. which extends the church's meeting, it extends the church's mission to basically allow church two things, at least from the way I look at it. A, to help people to realize not only their potential in the physical world, but their potential in the spiritual world, to find the purpose that God has for them. And to work with churches too on the matter of accessibility and making services so that people can come and get the full benefit. What I've learned is through life is to give out of what you've been given. And I really want to, if there's one message to say today, I think you almost don't need to hear it because you're here. You're here, which tells me you're not going to give up. Which tells me that you've decided to go on with your life and do what you need to do and not let this beat you. So I hope that today, a few life lessons that I've picked up along the way will give you some pointers. The first lesson is that, you know what, we all need a little help. There's no shame in it, and besides that, nobody on this earth, whether they got eyes or not, is without that need. There are times in all of our lives that we need a little help, and it's okay. Now, are people going to do dumb stuff? Yeah, people are going to do dumb stuff. But how much better to take that in stride and take that as an opportunity to educate. Take that as an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? That's not really what I need. If you really want to be helpful, this is what I need. And be gracious. Because most people, yeah, I've heard some experiences today that people were rude. Yeah, you're going to get those people. They're just jerks out there. That's the way it is. But most people are trying to be helpful. And if they're bumbling about it and do stupid stuff, take that in stride and take that as an opportunity to educate as to what really you need to be doing if you want to help somebody. Take that too into the workplace. One of the things I learned in school is that my teachers didn't know. I had to be the teacher. I had to many times tell them, both in grade school and in college, I had to come to them and say, this is what I need. They don't know. They're willing to help generally, but they don't know what to do. So you end up being the one who has to say, okay, this is how we do this. This is how we get through this. And maybe you have to ask around. Maybe you have to find the solution yourself. But they're afraid. If you'll just go and be confident. This goes for your employment prospects too. If you're on a job interview, you go in there knowing that you can do the job. And they're going to have questions. Hit those questions head on. And say, look, I know you must be wondering how I'm going to do this. Let me tell you how I'm going to do this. Just a few reasonable accommodations and we're on our way. Go in there with confidence. Be the teacher. Sometimes you have to be the teacher. And you'll get where you need to be. The other thing I've learned, and this was a hard lesson for me, I used to not want people to know that I was blind. And I could get away with it, as long as they weren't watching too close. Because I don't necessarily look blind unless you're paying attention. But I didn't want people to know because I didn't want to be treated different. Problem, though, is that I was getting treated different, just didn't know it. Because people would wave at me from across the room and I'd ignore them. People would look right at me and talk to me and I wouldn't know that they were talking to me. I would run into somebody or they would run into me. I created what I didn't understand for many years, or I would be in a social situation. I finally learned to start looking for people's hands, but they stick out their hand and I ignore it because I didn't know they were sticking out their hand. So I finally gave in at the age of 27 and started carrying my cane. I can get away without it, and if I'm in a situation where it's just not practical, I'll fold it up, put it on my belt, and work without it. But I have found that cane now, I've gone from not wanting anything to do with the cane unless I absolutely had to feeling naked without it. Yeah. It's over there in my bag right now. We're in this room, but I don't go anywhere without it anymore. Because it does actually help. think the hardest lesson at all for me to learn, especially not really being taught that I had any limits. I'm very thankful for that. But you know what? We do have limits. Yeah. And here's a story that perfectly illustrates that. When I was 18, I bought a motor scooter, little moped. Now, at least at that time in my life, if you put me on a quiet street, in a quiet neighborhood, I could ride a bicycle and be reasonably safe. A motorized vehicle, even though it only went 30 miles an hour, is a whole different story. I took this thing with me to college, and I am so proud. I have to brag on my parents again because, you know, if I was dad, I think I would have said, you shouldn't do that. You don't need to do that. But I think he knew. Obviously, there were lots of times in my life that he did give me advice, but I think he knew that was a losing battle. And if I didn't do it then, I would do it later. So he went along with it. He helped me, actually kept me from buying off this guy that was fixing to cheat me, and helped me get a new one. And I took it to school with me. Had some wrecks, but I was still going. And I was out one day. I was going to study. There was a beautiful place up on top of the hill. It was the University of Arkansas Fayetteville, and I was going to take my stuff up there and study like I used to do. And I turned onto this road, and all of a sudden I hear behind me, whoop, 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 whoop. I guess I need to pull over. I think they're after me. So I pull over, and he comes up to talk to me. He thinks I'm drunk. You know, I'm staying in my lane, but maybe not quite in the straight line. So he comes up, he talks to me. In Arkansas, at least at the time, I don't know what the laws are now, but you could drive a little 50cc vehicle like that without a license. I hadn't actually broken any traffic laws, so there wasn't really anything for him to cite me for. But he started asking me questions, you know, finding out what was going on. And he asked, "Hey, what is that in the back of your basket there?"
Oh, no.
I said, "That's a braille writer." He said, "I knew that, but I wanted to hear you say it." Needless to say, it wasn't long after that I got a letter from the school. It was time to stop riding that moped around school. And as much as I hated to admit it, I knew they were right. We do have limitations. You know, this whole week, I know, has been about showing you that your limitations are not as close as you might think that they are. But if your dream was to be a fighter pilot, yeah, you're probably going to have to reorient. But, you know, to say that we have limitations is not to say, again, that they're as close as we think that they are. It just means that we have to change the way that we do things. And that's why I titled this, "You Got to Change Your Ways." And that's easy for me to say because I was born this way and I've always had to deal with it, and it was just a fact of life. I really don't have an inkling of what you're going through. Maybe a little bit. My wife has multiple sclerosis and has declined over the years that I've known her, and I've watched her deal with that challenge a little bit from that perspective. But I really don't know what you're going through. What I do know, though, and what I do want to share with you, is life is not over, it's just different. Never think that you can't do something just because it hasn't been done before. Just this week, we were watching Mike Huckabee on Sunday night, and they had a football player, blind football player, on from this high school. I forget where the high school is, but they're making a movie about it. Now, I'm sure, like every movie ever made about blind people, it's going to have some stupid stuff in it. But it's actually a true story about this young man who plays high school football through the help of his coach and the willingness of his team to work with him. Now, if you had asked me, I would have said, "No, you can't play football. You probably need to find a different sport. Play football is off the table." But it's not. Somebody did it. When I was young, I thought I might like to be a doctor, but I thought there's no way a blind person could be a doctor. Well, I now know that there are blind doctors out there. I could have done that. Never assume that it's out of reach just because it hasn't been done. Find a way to do it. Find new ways of doing it. technology is our friend. I am so amazed at the world we live in. Just in the time that I have been alive, I have got on my belt this iPhone a device that replaces, let me see, it replaces what used to be a reading machine the size of a washing machine.
Yeah.
It replaces an entire library of books. It replaces my radio. It replaces my even a TV if I wanted to. It identifies money. It allows me to have a magnifier right here with me. It's amazing. I always tell people, being a computer programmer, that the computer is nothing but an overgrown light switch. All it really knows is off and on, yes and no. Now, yes, it is amazing what you can do with enough combinations of that. But don't be afraid of it. It's a stupid machine. You are smarter than that computer.
Okay.
Just a matter of understanding how it works. Don't be afraid of technology. Technology is your friend. We've talked about support groups already. I know y'all have had some exposure this week to various support groups that are available to help you do things. I'm involved now with the local American Council of the Blind. If you have a faith interest, there are even the Dallas. I'm not sure what auspices the organization is under.
Church conference.
Texas Church. Okay, you're aware of it. But there's a group called the Christian Fellowship of the Blind that meets at my church on Saturday, every fourth Saturday here in the area.
Where's the church located?
I'm sorry?
Where's it located
It's a Bartimaeus Baptist Temple, 69. I can give you all the information if you want it. It's 6929 Bay Street is where the church is. And I've got cards on me if you want to see me afterwards, and I'd be happy to give you contact information. And I would not be true to myself if I did not at least say, I promise not to preach, but I am going to at least say this much. If it weren't for my faith in Jesus, I wouldn't be standing here before you today. That is what has sustained me to get me to this point. Nothing else matters. Life is not over. It's just different. Thank you for letting me speak to you today.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to take any questions. If you want to speak to me outside of this forum, you can write to me at larry@bbtemple.org. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook as well. And, of course, I'll be around during lunch for anybody that wants to talk to me. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Well, what we're going to do